Every winter, people around the country do their best to make their home feel a little cozier. Maybe it's lighting a cinnamon-scented candle, looping a Yule log on the TV, or of course, binge watching Harry Potter for the 100th time.
That's right. Every winter, we help our homes do their best impressions of cozy cabin getaways. Or, as the internet dubbed it, Cabincore. Cabincore, the older, broodier sibling of cottagecore, is where mountain man grit meets cozy interior design. Think of it as nature's masterclass in contradiction. A celebration of wilderness that doesn't just make you feel close to nature, it brings nature right inside. Because here's the thing about cabin design. It doesn't try to tame nature or hide from it. Instead, it turns rugged into refined and somehow makes minus 30 degrees feel downright cozy. Just ask any of my fellow Canadians.
Welcome back to A Style is Born. Before we cozy up to the modern design of Cabincore, we need to go back to a time when living in nature wasn't about aesthetics. It was about making a statement. People like Henry David Thoreau, you probably remember him from high school English class, rejected modern society by living in the woods. They even had a fancy name for it: transcendentalism. Definition: when your entire personality is telling everyone that society is like totally fake. But while Thoreau was journaling by his pond, Canadians were actually building something more permanent. The first wilderness cabins weren't about aesthetics, they were about survival. Talk about commitment to the bit. From there, the cabin evolved from bare necessity to luxury escape. Wealthy urbanites started building summer homes in Muskoka. Ski chalets popped up in Jasper. And suddenly, roughing it in the wilderness wasn't so rough anymore. This idea of making nature feel like home has been showing up everywhere, from rustic hunting lodges to luxury mountain retreats. But nobody quite mastered it like us Canadians, who turned our harshest season into our coziest tradition. And while all of these spaces had that one with nature vibe, they were all actually rooted in one thing: proving that the best way to flip off modern life is to build yourself a really nice cabin in the woods. To truly talk about cabin design, we first need to talk about Canada's superpower. No, not hockey, not maple syrup, and no, not being incredibly nice to total strangers, though we do that a lot. I'm talking about turning harsh winters into a thing of beauty. See, traditional cabin architecture wasn't about aesthetics. It was about trying not to freeze to death. Priorities, am I right? Those steep roofs, they're not just for dramatics. They're designed to handle massive amounts of snow. And those thick log walls, they're actually nature's best insulation, absorbing heat during the day and slowly releasing it at night. Form and function at its finest. Over time, what started as pure survival evolved into something else entirely. Suddenly, those exposed wooden beams weren't just holding up the roof, they were making a statement. That stone fireplace wasn't just keeping you warm, it was the centerpiece of your great room. And your Instagram feed, let's be honest. And let's talk about materials for a second. Wood, stone, and leather, they aren't just aesthetic choices. They're literally what happens when the landscape moves indoors. Think of it as nature's version of bring your work home energy. My favorite part? Every region in Canada puts its own spin on the style. Coastal cabins need to handle salty winds and rain, so they've got these gorgeous weathered cedar exteriors. Mountain cabins, they're all about those dramatic A-frame roofs and panoramic windows. Because if you're going to be snowed in for 3 months, you might as well have a view worth watching YouTube next to. And that's the genius of cabin design. It doesn't fight against winter, it works with it, allowing us to celebrate the simple things and have a deeper appreciation of nature without, actually being in it. I especially love the dark, moody colors that work perfectly for early sunsets and late sleep-ins, and the layers of textiles that are essential when it's minus 30 outside. And that soft lighting, it makes everything feel warm, even when your phone is telling you that it's definitely, absolutely not. But here's where cabin design gets really interesting. It's basically one big, beautiful contradiction. I mean, think about it. On the outside, you've got this rugged, almost primitive structure that looks as though it was built by pure mountain man energy. But step inside, suddenly you're in the coziest space imaginable. It's like your outdoorsy friend who looks like they could wrestle a bear, but actually just wants to talk about their tea collection. It's this balance that makes Cabincore so fascinating. It's where nature meets nurture, and every design choice is a conversation between rough and refined. Those raw timber walls softened by plush plaid. That rugged stone fireplace is complemented with sleek modern art. That antique cast iron stove looks right at home next to a perfectly modern coffee maker. But the real magic happens when you bring the wilderness inside. I'm talking pine branches in ceramic vases, locally sourced stone, natural wood, everything. It's like nature decided to get really into interior design. And here's my favorite contradiction of all. In a world obsessed with doing more, being more, achieving more, sometimes the most #productive thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Just snuggle up with a view of the snow falling outside and a latte, or maybe even a tea. Here's what I love most about the recent cabincore trend. This isn't just about remote cabins in the woods anymore. People are bringing this rugged, meets refined aesthetic into their everyday spaces. What started as a distinctly Canadian way of life has become America's favorite way to escape. These days, you're just as likely to find cabincore vibes in a Manhattan apartment as you are in a Muskoka lake house. So how does cabincore look in real life, even if you don't have a woodland retreat like this one? It starts with embracing imperfection. That knotty wood table, the slightly weathered leather chair, they're not flaws, they're character. Because cabincore isn't about that Pinterest perfect cabin look. It's about spaces that feel lived in, warmed up, and real. So instead of rushing to fill your space with the latest trends, cabincore is about letting your home tell a story. We're talking about that reclaimed wood beam that definitely had a previous life. Those vintage copper pots that tell stories of family meals. That well-worn leather armchair that's perfectly broken in. It's not about perfection, it's about connection. Not ready to go full lived in with your decor? You can still bring in that cabin energy with pieces that get better with age. So maybe cabincore isn't just about plaid blankets and wood paneling after all. Maybe it's actually about finding the balance between modern niceties and being one with nature. And while we can't all escape to a cabin in the woods, we can all find our own ways to bring that rugged coziness home. Because sometimes the quietest revolution is actually pretty cozy. Want to bring some cabin vibes into your own space? Here are a few of my favorite pieces that balance that perfect rustic meets refined look. See you next time.